What's up, you guys? This is Jake State Farm with Atomic Theory, and we are back with another video. And in today's video, we are going over the House Multi-Variance Championship. If you guys missed the initial stream, I'll put a link to that in this description. But yeah, the finals was played between NeverOFzero and bijiy earlier today, and bijiy was able to win. If you're unfamiliar with how this tournament works, basically you put together a list of variants, and the more variants that you put on there, the higher the multiplier that you get when you win. So say you put 4 variants on your list, then every game you win gets multiplied by 4 points. The catch is that your opponent before the match gets to choose a variant that they want to play against you. So if you put every variant on there and you're super weak in a couple, then your opponent's gonna choose variants that they know that they can beat you in. So this was a super great tournament, and at the end we got down to these 4 players here, and they did a Swiss with the 4 of them, and yeah, bijiy was able to win. But there was a bit of controversy that we'll be covering today. In today's match, NeverOFzero chose Atomic from bijiy's list, considering NeverOFzero is by far the best player right now. He's over 100 points higher rated than the next highest player. So yeah, NeverOFzero was hoping to sweep the Atomic portion, and yeah, we're just going to say that did not happen. He was not able to sweep. And before I get into this, I do just want to say that I'm going to put all bias aside, and I'm just going to present you guys with what I see. I've only actually gone over this first game. I haven't gone over any of the other games yet, so it'll be a live reaction. And these guys are both my friends. NeverOFzero and I have been friends for a bit longer, but there's no bias here on my side. I just want to look at the games and present you guys with the evidence and let you come up with your own conclusion. But either way, this was a super fun match. It was super exciting, and yeah, a lot of respect to both players here. They played well. So in this first game, bijiy is the one that performed well here, and was suspected of some allegations. I was talking with Pure earlier today, and he put it in a good way. He was like, it's like when you get arrested, right? It's like you get put on trial. You're innocent until proven guilty. So we're obviously going to look at these games, and we're not going to be pointing fingers at all, but we just want to look at the evidence. And if someone is found to be cheating, there's always a chance that there is that outside chance, right? The 1 in a million, whatever. If you decide that they're cheating and then they weren't, there's always that chance that they weren't, and that they just so happened to play a bunch of really good moves in a row that lined up with what the engine said. So, with all that being said, we're going to look through these games quickly and see what we can find. For the most part, I think I'm going to keep the engine on, just because we're not really analyzing the game so much as we're just going to be looking at bijiy, and we're going to be seeing, did he play any suspicious moves, and I think the engine will help us with that. So, without further ado, let's get into it here. Again, bijiy is the black pieces here, and okay, so far in the opening, I don't really notice anything too weird. Yeah, he's playing quickly, but this is all normal to me. 94 is a mistake, but it's definitely a move that I would have played here. Makes a lot of sense. And I'd say the first, so bishop b7 was played really quickly, but it wasn't even that good of a move. Here's an example where a move like rook h5 would have been really suspicious to me, right? Like, the idea behind it does make sense, but it's just such a hard move to spot that you wouldn't really ever play it, right? You're stopping queen h5, and also potentially stopping this h-pawn from ever pushing, and yeah, then you'll probably play knight f6 after that. Maybe even some ideas of rook f5, which you can now do because you're defending this h5 square. So like a move like rook h5, especially if it was played within seconds, would be super alarming to me, but it wasn't played. And we continue on here. And Okay, so this is the first time in the match where I feel like it could have been a little bit suspicious. I will say this, like, so bijiy was able to find rook d8 here, which is a really strong move, and I would say, like, maybe not the most human move, but um, I will say, like, in bijiy's shoes, right, like, supposedly you were going to cheat. Maybe you wouldn't do it at a time where white is already plus 10, right? Like, maybe you would just chalk this up to a loss and say, okay, if I'm going to cheat, let me save my computer moves till later. Honestly, this is not that much of a computer move. I think you could easily calculate that after queenside castles, there's queen f4, and yeah, there's no defending this. Like e5, you're just coming in like this. So it's possible that bijiy saw that and said, well, I still want to activate my rook, so let me just play rook d8, and now obviously queen f4, still a strong move according to the computer, but a lot less strong there. Okay, and this is what was actually played. So I don't think this is suspicious at all. Like, yeah, it's not the most human move, but it's definitely not like an engine move by any means. Like, I feel like rook h5 would have been. And I mean, you can also get here by process of elimination, right? You can't move the knight, you can't move the rook, you can't move the bishop. There's no good squares for it, so it's like, what piece are you going to move? Yeah, the computer's also suggesting some captures here, but yeah, rook d8 is very logical to me here. So, okay, so queen f4, and then the rooks get traded off here. And, okay, another good move, but again, this looks completely normal to me. And here I honestly thought, yeah, I thought NeverOFzero had better here, but I will say this move by Never was nothing short of incredible, as you can see here on the engine. Anything else is just a draw. Like, for instance, he would have had to see after king d2 and king f8, there's no queen g3 because of knight e4, and there's a fork here, which is just looking so far ahead, right? Because now after king d1, if you try king f8, then queen g3 is just going to be mate. So just an incredible move to kind of getting ready to get your king in front of this pawn here, but also, you know, if we look at black's threats here, his threat is rook c7, which would be followed by c5 capture here. Of course, we see after king d1, if you try rook c7, now there's queen d5. And after rook b6 and queen a5, you can now no longer play this with a check on the king. So king d1 is just such an incredible move by Never. And of course, I'm not suspecting Never of cheating at all. It's just an incredible move to find, also in like 20 seconds or so. Yeah, if it were me, I probably would have honestly played something like h5. And I kind of missed this idea. Rook c7 was, I guess, kind of the only move that would have survived there. But anyway, king d1, great move. And then the rest of this game was, you know, not too crazy. Never was just barely able to pull it out here. So let's say bijiy takes here, then I'm guessing you could play king d2. And yeah, after e5 here and here, then white will be able to win this just barely, just by one move here. But it's black's move here, so if black tries to do this, then white will just follow. And yeah, white will eventually be able to win this. So of course, the wins for Never are inherently not going to be as suspicious anyway, so we will try not to take too much time on those. Okay, this one I'm really curious to see what the engine says on it, because I thought this was just an incredible game by both players. This line by Never with h5, h4, h3 it's kind of one of those lines where it's like you can't really prep against it. I mean, I guess I'd say like the best move after h5, I think, is probably just to play h4. H4 kind of cuts off what black is trying to do there, but either way, just I think oh, my bad, did not mean to hit that button, sorry about that. But okay, so let's see. So after bishop h6 and bishop g5, okay, that makes sense. Only move you could really play there. Yeah, so like even here, like in the moment, I remember thinking maybe knight e4 wasn't best, but computer says it's a fine move. The tough thing here is that your bishop is attacking this pawn on h3, So normally you'd want to move this, but then you would allow something like knight g4, and yeah, I guess computer shows that, but that'd be an easy thing to spot for a solid player. Yeah, knight d6 makes a lot of sense. That's what I would have played. Okay, so another blunder by bijiy. Yeah, knight f1 was a really good move. Yeah, and here bishop g5 was kind of an only move. I guess rook e6, they're saying would also survive, but you'd basically, it'd be rook d6, d takes, and then you'd have to play bishop g5. So only move there for Never, which sucks for him. I mean, you'd love to keep this attack going, but so far from the white side, from bijiy's side, I don't see anything suspicious or out of the ordinary. Okay, yeah, so like king of, that would have been a strange move to make, but didn't play it. Yeah, and for bijiy here, like, maybe c4 could be a try that I would go for if I were playing this. Yeah, I guess there's the rook coming in still. So bishop f6 makes a lot of sense, just kind of retreating and getting your bishop ready to defend. Okay, g4 is an impressive move, but again, nothing out of the ordinary, kind of the only move to save mate here, so it's a little bit easier to find. Yeah, and then here bijiy loses anyway, so nothing suspicious so far. I think it's not this game, but I want to say the next one after this. And this one never actually misplayed this. I remember looking at this game after it was played live, and yeah, I think Never had a chance to win this one and messed up. And so far, you can see we've got bijiy's database pulled up here, and he did take some time on this move g5, but I think that was just kind of either remembering his prep or just trying to find the he probably knew these moves that he played here and just trying to decide which one to play. So g5, nothing suspicious there. And yeah, we can see this is all prep from bijiy, so far nothing crazy. Okay, so we're finally probably out of his prep. And okay, so nothing suspicious there, not a crazy move to make. Yeah, he played knight f6 immediately, and I remember thinking I would have done the exact same thing, and never just finding best move after best move to keep the advantage. But knight f6 was definitely, I mean, to me, I never would have even considered bishop d6, to be honest. I would have just played knight f6 immediately as well. So yeah, and I probably would have played knight d5 here. h4, I guess it makes sense, but personally, I would have tried to get my knight in here, and I would have thought my only drawing chances were to stop white's rook from getting in. Like here as bijiy, I would have thought I was dead lost, and it looks like the computer kind of agrees. Rook c1, and you have to sidestep. And yeah, here I would say you can't really spot anything from bijiy in this game specifically because it was kind of for the most part prep. And then the only kind of weird move was when he played knight f6 immediately, but like I said, that's a move that I would have played. Yeah, there was something interesting here where black doesn't want to go back because it'll allow rook h8 and a trade of the rooks, which would give white the win. And so obviously you can't play king f6 because of rook f7, so king g6 is the only move. And then the idea that I was looking at, you can see it's in italics here, I guess, because this wasn't actually played in the game. But my suggestion would have been g4, and after f takes and f5 check, it at least gives you a chance. It's not clear if it's winning, but okay, after rook h6, you can't go back because, okay, for instance, you go here, rook f6, and here. Essentially, you're eventually going to get this. Well, okay, in this case, it's just mate, but yeah, say you go the other way, then you're going to get the rooks. And instead of going back, like say, if you do king e7, it could be the same thing, or there's also f6 as well, just pushing your pawn down. and essentially you're going to force the black king into a vulnerable spot where it doesn't want to be. So for instance, like king e6, f7, and king e5. Now the black king doesn't want to go to either side here, because if you go here, the rook's straight off, and if you go here, then white's able to queen with check, and so you just force black to make a decision, right? And okay, so that's that line. Yeah, so basically black is not able to go back at all. And if you go forward, then there's rook e6. Again, you don't want to go to d4 because you allow rook d6 check with the fork. And so then you'd play king f4. And after rook e4, there's no going back here or back here because of rook takes pawn. So you'd play king f3. And now the kings are connected. So you could play something like, say f6 or whatever. And if black tries to come here with the perpetual, wow, okay, so even king g2 even this position I don't understand at all, but as you can see, white is the only one fighting for an advantage there. And I think it was a missed opportunity by Never, and I definitely don't see, this is, BG ended up scoring 2.5 out of 6, which was very impressive, but this is one that I think Never should have, I think it was in this position where they agreed to a draw. And yeah, I just don't see why you wouldn't go for this idea here. It just seems, at the moment, at least to me, it seemed pretty clear that this at least gave white some fighting chances. And honestly, I think Never probably would have pulled it out if they went into this line. There's a lot of chances for black to mess up. And even with best play, it's honestly not clear if black can hold the draw. So far 3 games through, and 3 games where I feel like BG has definitely played like a human. This is the one where I really wanted to look at. It was a win for BG. It was his first win of the match, and it also gave him a 95% accuracy. So I haven't looked at this game yet. Obviously, I commentated it in real time, but I'm very curious to see if there's any suspicion raised in this game. Okay, so far this is, I believe, all prep. Yeah, this knight d8 move is one that I play a lot, and okay, you can see this is the only position that BG has reached in this line, but that's because Never's kind of played it weird. I think BG likes to go for this knight d8, knight b7 idea, which is a pretty common idea in this line. Yeah, and same thing here, playing f3, just preparing for like it captures. You're wanting to go ahead and get that pawn push so that there's no immediate queen f2 threats there. Okay, yeah, the knight c3 makes a lot of sense. Okay, rook b1, I was gonna say, yeah, rook b1 in the moment was very weird to me, but it seems like maybe on higher depth the computer's okay with it, but it seems like maybe the computer didn't love it anyway. I guess we'll look and see. Yeah, in the moment I was thinking like knight b5 seems really slow here. You obviously don't want to take this anyway, whether there's a rook here or not. So I was thinking knight b5 is not a huge threat. I'm not sure what I would have played as white here. Maybe something like bishop b5 and c6, and then looking to eventually castle. I guess that's pretty scary. Yeah, I don't know. I would have been somewhat scared here as white with g5 and h5 and just these pawns pushed here. But even on high depth, this seems like the computer doesn't love rook b1, so I thought it was a weird move, but honestly, it makes sense. He was probably trying to prepare knight b5, and he thought that rook b1 kind of stopped bishop b4, although I would argue that bishop b4 wasn't much of a threat anyway. So then we have g4, and okay, knight takes d5. I wouldn't really say there's anything too suspicious here. I mean, yeah, you're kind of getting rid of your bad knight. I guess part of the question would be, why didn't you play rook b1 if you're just going to sack this knight on d5 anyway? So this would be the first move that I would say is there's any alarm bells here, but it's definitely not enough. I mean, this is the move that I would have played, honestly. Just looking at the position, I would say, yeah, this is a solid move here. So I don't think it's anything to be too suspicious about. Like, say you play knight b5 here instead, I could see why BG doesn't like this, because Well, actually, the computer ends up being fine with this as well, I guess. But like, if you're gonna go for like c3 and queen a4, this kind of loses you a tempo, right? Because it's no longer comes with check here. So knight takes d5 also just makes sense because you're gonna prepare bishop c4 and get this bishop in as well. So to me, it makes a lot of logical sense. Okay, g takes, and yeah, I think c3 makes a lot of sense. Like, the only other move that you could really think about here is maybe bishop c4. And yeah, the computer doesn't like this. I guess basically c3 is needed because you need to get this queenside attack going as much as possible. It's definitely a strong move, but it's not one that could like never be made by a human. Like, I definitely think it's still in the realm of a human idea, right? I'm going for c3, I'm getting my queen out, and he's calculating that if bishop takes, then he'll have his rook coming down, and if something like c6, then he'll play queen a5 and come in like this. So it still makes a lot of sense to me. I probably would have either played that or maybe bishop c4, but honestly, I probably would have played c3 in this position. Okay, then we have pawn to g3, and yeah, queen a4 makes a lot of sense. Queen b3 would have been interesting. I don't think anyone would have really expected to see a move like that. And then never had to play queen c6 here. If you play pawn to c6, then there is queen a5. And this is the only, reason why maybe Never would be a little bit suspicious of bijiy, like thinking that he played c3, calculating this whole line, knowing that there's no f2 or f takes or anything like that. But yeah, right here it's pretty clear that yeah, white's winning this pretty hard. So you had to play queen c6 instead. And here there was g takes f3, and I was really saying that Never should play this move bishop d6, which I think is quite strong. And according to the computer, bishop c4 is the only move that really defends against this, which is not the easiest move to spot. You've played bishop d6. As Never, you could just say, I'm going to take that. Of course, this loses to rook f8, so you probably wouldn't play that. But then the other thing you might look at is, this bishop coming down to h2. And so you may think, I need to play h4. Well, now that again loses to rook f8. So I think where Never went wrong here, and again, bishop d6 is still losing, so maybe he just expected bijiy to find bishop c4. But honestly, I don't think this is too simple. Like, bishop takes h2, and now you have to be somewhat accurate, right? Like bishop f7 and king f8, and okay, now there's threats of this h pawn. There's threats of the knight coming in, and like say queen takes c6. I think black has, probably not, but I think black has some chances. So I would more so say here it seems like almost a missed opportunity from Never. I think he just wanted to get his rook active, but I think what he failed to realize is that a rook on the f file was a lot more powerful than a rook on the g file, based off of the position here. And so, right, because even something like king d1, could probably defend here. Yeah, computer says this works, even though it's kind of scary. So here bijiy plays queen b5, which makes a lot of sense. You're basically threatening queen b8, so instead of just taking, you're kind of forcing black to be the one to make the trade. And rook g1. And okay, I probably would have played rook takes g1 here, but king d1 also makes a lot of sense. Here's where it gets maybe a little bit scary for bijiy after rook b8 and rook f8. I thought king g7 was a move. Okay, I guess it didn't matter. Eventually he was going to have to go on this diagonal anyway. Yeah, I thought Never messed up by just conceding this bishop a3 immediately. But yeah, okay, so 95% accuracy, but I wouldn't say there's anything really too crazy in this game. Like, my personal opinion is that the only two moves that you could really bat an eye at here are these two moves of knight takes d5 and then c3. But I'd argue that both are pretty human. They're definitely the most, like, out of everything we've seen so far in this match, I'd say the most. If you were going to make a case, those would be the two moves so far that you could say are the most, like, worthy of being looked at. But bijiy is a very strong player. He's now top 10 in the world currently, and this makes a lot of sense. Especially this c3 move makes a lot of sense, I think. and knight takes d5 too. I mean, you need to get your knight out. I think it'd be between knight takes d5 and knight b5 for me. And personally, I would have played knight takes d5 here. I'm pretty confident. So yeah, nothing too crazy. Definitely a good game from BG, but other than those two moves, I know he had 95% accuracy, but I can't really look at any other moves where I would even really bat an eye at. All right, moving along, we've got another victory for NeverOFzero here, which he was the white pieces, and let's see what happened in this line. Yeah, so this is all prep so far. And yeah, it's hard to have much suspicion just because this game was just such a blowout. So yeah, nothing really to see there from BG. All right, here we go. Last game, and again, there's a 90% accuracy here, so this could be one to look at. It was another win for BG, so let's see what's happening here. Okay, once again, this is all prep so far. A3, very common idea in this line. Okay, so mistake from BG, so we know he wasn't using an engine there. Okay, yeah, C5 makes a lot of sense, just cutting off this open file here. Okay, once again, yeah, D5 makes a lot of sense. And D takes E makes a lot of sense once again. Okay, like, I would say, like, here, like, if you played a random 98 just in the middle of this, like, you could say, like, something like this would be suspicious, just because it's not, like, a common idea that you would see in Atomic. Like, if I saw this, and it was truly, which in this case, this was the best idea for white, like, it wouldn't be enough for me to say, like, this guy is cheating, but it would be enough for me to raise an eyebrow, because I would say this is not really a common idea that you see. Like, you don't normally see trading off this knight. I guess the reason why it works here is because this f pawn is going to be really strong. With these pawns here, you're just going to be able to eventually play f5 maybe and trade it off for one of these pawns. But that'd be an example of what I'd call, like, something suspicious. Like here, d5, that's just the most intuitive move. The only thing you kind of have to be worried about is like c takes d. This is what maybe I'd be worried about. But yeah, I guess you'd have bishop b5 here maybe. I don't know, it gets tricky. Like, this is not a line that you'd normally see either. Yeah, wow. So this is kind of what I mean. Like, it's a line that never could have gone for, and kind of making a BGC1 move that keeps the advantage here. Yeah, that would have been an interesting line. But okay, so like the way that BG has played this so far, like it's been accurate, but it's been absolutely what you would expect from a player that plays this line a bunch. These are all very common ideas, I think. Yeah, getting your bishop out and castling, definitely something you want to do here. Yep, gotta cut off the pawn. And then cutting off the knight. Like, this is it's an impressive move, but it's also like, I mean, the knight's threatening to come in to b4 here, or sorry, a4, and you don't want to allow that because, well, we can throw this on. Yeah, knight a4, and it's saying bishop d4, and then after c5, but like eventually your threat would be maybe to come into b2 and then play something like knight c3 maybe and get some attacks there. So a4 is an impressive move, but it's not out of the realm of humanness by any means. Okay, yeah, rook h7 would have been an impressive move there. h4 and g4 makes a lot of sense. Okay, so mistake from BG there, playing knight e8. I guess the computer's okay with it, but that's not really a move that I would personally consider. I mean, I'm trying to think of what he's even going for there. Like, that's the kind of move where if the computer loved this move, then I'd be asking questions like, BG, why did you even play that move? But like every move that we've seen so far that he's played, it seemed like there was a clear goal. Like even in game 4 it was, when BG won that first game that he won. And, I was talking about like knight takes d5 and c3. It was still pretty clear ideas that he was going for. It wasn't like some crazy outlandish idea. I mean, it was pretty clear, like, this is what you're going for here. In this case, 98, I don't really know what he's going for. I mean, it's a fine move just because your position is so strong anyway, but it's definitely not like the best move, and like the computer doesn't think it's the best move. So unless there's some other computer out there that's recommending this move, then yeah, I'd say nothing suspicious there. Okay, got a take there. King h1 makes sense. And then yeah, definitely want to trade off the queens. I think that makes sense. Okay, yeah, so bishop c5 would have been super impressive. I personally probably would have played knight c3 here just to cut off this rook from infiltrating. But instead he goes knight d2. And yeah, knight takes b3 makes a lot of sense. And yeah, all this makes sense to me. I actually, during the match, suggested rook a2, which the computer actually prefers over rook a3, so you could even make the case that if he was cheating, he would have played something like rook a2. But yeah, this was my suggestion during the match, just trying to get out of the way of this bishop. I mean, maybe rook b1 works anyway. Yeah, I guess anything really works here, so. And then I suggested knight d6 and rook c1, and he played that. So maybe he was just listening to the stream. Who knows? No, I'm only joking. But yeah, and then once the king gets out of the way, you trade off the rooks. And yeah, this just all makes a lot of sense to me. This was weird that it took him so long to get mate here, but it's probably just nerves. So yeah, overall, I'd say hard to spot a move that from any game other than game 4 that was out of the ordinary at all. But I will be honest, like just from my personal opinion, and I want, I've presented you guys with evidence now. I've tried to go over maybe what would be considered like a weird idea through some of these games. I was saying like, hey, here's an idea that doesn't normally get played a bunch. If he plays it, then that would be really strange. For instance, in this game, like here, instead of d5, if he had played like knight e8 and g6 and knight takes f6, then I would have been like, okay, like that's not normally an idea that you go for in this line, so why did you decide to go for it in this line? But yeah, I can't really find any moves like that for bijiy. He played 2 really accurate moves back to back in game 4, but to me, they both had very clear ideas. It wasn't anything too out of the ordinary, so I'd love to hear what you guys think, especially NeverOFzero or other top players. Yeah, what do you think about this? Am I missing something? Is there something about this match in particular that was off? Was it the amount of time that he was using per game? What was it? This is not a defense for bijiy or anything like that. I am just giving my opinion. I will say I maybe tend to be optimistic about people's honesty because back when Jesus was banned and suspected of cheating against me and other players as well, I'll be honest, I didn't agree. I didn't see it. Not that I disagreed. I think there was definitely a chance he was cheating, but I definitely was, like when I heard that he was banned, I was very surprised. And it wasn't until they presented the evidence to me that I was like, okay, maybe there's some truth to this. But yeah, anyway, this is just my overview of the situation, and yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys think, but thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.